Aliens and the extraterrestrial beings have always existed on this planet, recorded throughout our history of the human civilization race. First found 12,000 years ago about aliens who came down from heaven called the Anunnaki. And it's recorded in the ancient Sumerian texts, as I say, they're as old as about 12,000 years ago, and it reports aliens which came down. They mixed DNA of apes and their own in test tubes, and they created us humans. One of my favorite people who talk about this is David Icke, who you should definitely see his lectures on YouTube. They're definitely the best you'll see on the truth of alien life. Now, what makes all these cases 100% real and really historically that it happened is that every single civilization and religious and historical belief has recorded their own exact same similar storyline of gods who came down or who bred with the females of mankind, one god who sinned, one alien who sinned, and then the other gods, cursed that one out because they gave the human secret knowledge. This is found in basically nearly every single religion found throughout the ancient world, and this is what the Christian Bible preachers like to say, that this gives more reason that the Bible is supposedly the book of God because every single other civilization agrees with it. Well, no, actually, the Bible was mostly more copied from these original myths. That doesn't mean that these myths are all fake. No, they are really real. The idea of a flood is real, not a whole worldwide flood. I doubt it. But there is proof that there was a flood around sometime Mesopotamia or something, around the ancient world, where they did have a boat and filled up either animals or something. Because it's recorded in every single civilization on this belief, on the belief in a flood and someone on a boat carrying animals, etc. Much respect to the creationist Ken Hovind, who does a really good job at lecturing on the truth towards the Bible and other religions, and definitely you should watch this and listen to what he says on the myths to do with the flood.
And today there are 270 surviving flood legends. They're still telling the story about the flood in many cultures that have never heard of the Bible. The Hawaiians had a legend that said long after the death of Kunihana, the first man, the world became a wicked, terrible place to live. There was one good man left. His name was Nu'u. He made a great canoe with a house on it and filled it with animals. The waters came up over all the earth and killed all the people. Only Nu'u and his family were saved. Interesting. One family saved in a giant canoe. That sounds kind of like the Bible story, doesn't it? The Chinese have a story called the Hiking Classic. It's one of the oldest stories in the world. It says the father of their civilization is a guy named Fuhai. The story says Fuhai, his wife, 3 sons, and 3 daughters escaped a great flood. After the flood, they were the only people alive on earth. And they repopulated the world. Well, now that sounds kind of like the Bible story too, doesn't it? The Toltec Indians in Mexico have a legend that says the first world lasted 1,716 years and was destroyed by a flood that covered the highest mountains. Only one family named Coxcox survived. 1,716 years. Well, the Bible dates add up to 1656. But that's not bad for a legend 4,000 years old. I just suspect maybe even the Atlantis story is another flood legend. As far as the people on the ark were concerned, the whole world sank beneath the waves, Why would there be 270 surviving flood legends today? Oh, well, I think it's because there was a flood. That's my theory. It's not too complicated.
Now, I would like to move on to the betrayers, which is recorded in every single religion throughout the ancient world, about a group or one individual who gave humans secret knowledge. And for this, the other gods or God cursed this one and cast him out for giving the human secret knowledge, as this was against God's plans. Now, the very first betrayer we come to is Enki, recorded in the religious texts of the first human civilization in ancient Iraq, which is called Sumer. According to the Sumerians, the 2 main chiefs of gods were Enki and Enlil, who came from above down on earth. Many will be familiar with them under the term Anunnaki, which simply means godly beings which came from above. The goal for Enki and Enlil was to create a slave race on the planet Earth who would be made to follow their commands and call them as leader or lord, as we get in all our mainstream religions of today. Now, it so happened that Enki went behind what Enlil had said and betrayed his whole clan, as he secretly went down to the humans and told them about this secret knowledge. And right after Enki was caught out, he was banished by the other gods for giving the humans this secret knowledge when they the god specifically told him, Enkai, to not give the humans the secret knowledge, because the humans are the slave race, and obviously slaves are not allowed the 100% freedom. Now, Enkai continued with creating a secret brotherhood of the snake cult, which various humans seemed very fascinated with. This is, I would say, be the first textual information which we have of secret societies and religious occults, which nowadays are mainly referred under labels of witchcraft, Satanism, and various Freemasonry cults, which has always left a wide, fascinating eye for conspiracy theorists. So, the conspiracy theorists are not making stuff up. This originated in the ancient texts of Sumer, the Sumerian texts of ancient Iraq, as we find with Enkai and his secret brotherhood of the snake, which, as the same with the snake in Genesis, represents that snake of knowledge. Every religion has its own snake of knowledge, just like Buddhism has Buddhas sat under the tree. The tree is the roots, our growth of our body, reaching up to heaven, which is similar to the Babel rising, which the God of the Bible hated. Yes, and as I said, Buddhism, when the snake does not attack him when he's meditating, and there's pictures of him, etc., with a snake around him, that represents, the life force. And ironically, I will now be quoting from Richard Dawkins' book, The Magic of Reality, because he actually does describe in his book some of the same myths around the world. He says here, the Norse peoples of Scandinavia, famous as Viking seafarers, had lots of gods, as the Greeks and Romans did. The name of their chief god was Odin, sometimes called Wotan or Woden, from which we get our Wednesday. Thursday comes from another Norse god, Thor, the god of thunder, which he made with his mighty hammer. Anyway, one day Odin was walking along the seashore with his brothers, who were also gods, and they came upon 2 tree trunks. One of these tree trunks they turned into the first man, whom they called Ask, and the other they turned into the first woman, naming her Embla. Having created the bodies of the first man and first woman, the brother gods then gave them the breath of life, followed by consciousness, faces, and the gift of speech. Now you realize that in this myth story from the Vikings, Scandinavia, ancient Scandinavia, it has the tree trunks, and again the tree trunks and the serpents as well, etc., play a very interesting similarity throughout the ancient religious worlds. Now we come to a god, as I mentioned before, called Prometheus. Now, the ancient Greek Titan god Prometheus is reported as a trickster, as found throughout ancient tablets and scriptures written about him. It is reported that he was known to cause great stirs amongst the gods and mock them and make fun of them. It is also reported that Prometheus had given humanity the secret knowledge of fire, which angered the gods, especially Zeus, who chained and bound him to a giant bulldozer rock, where he was sentenced to be tormented and punished. Like any other group of religious traditions, I am sure Prometheus's secret knowledge began to span various cults in the same manner as Enkai's did, spawning witchcraft, paranormal activities, and knowledge which the gods believed that no human should possess. Because we find all this of ancient secret society, witchcraft, Satanism, that began all those thousands of years ago. And by the way, you may notice I'm quoting when I'm speaking of these characters, which is originally from a small book that I have wrote about the notes with these gods. So I'm quoting from that to help explain further on the similarities and to explain it into more detail for the audience. Now we come to the serpent Satan, as found in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The Bible recounts a very similar storyline as found on the ancient Sumerian tablets about the beings Enkai and Enlil, and about the secret knowledge which no humans are meant to possess. Now the serpent says to Adam and Eve in the garden in Genesis 3-5, as we compare this with the original Sumerian Enkai myth. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. And this secret knowledge is meant to make them like gods. Genesis 3:22. And the Lord God said, the man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Now the serpent, forgiving the humans, Adam and Eve, the secret knowledge was banished by God for this. And as we see, Enkai was banished by the gods for giving them secret knowledge, and in ancient Greece, Prometheus was banished by the gods for giving the humans the secret knowledge of fire. Now, do you really think this is just a coincidence, or is there really more to it? I definitely believe there is more to it, especially as we look at all the similarities. There's so many similarities, there's even more to show you. And I highly recommend you reading David Icke's The Biggest Secret. Even though I don't agree with everything in it, I still definitely agree what he says in the few first chapters about the gods, and i.e. which are actually aliens, the extraterrestrial, which came to Earth thousands of years ago, and then different religions, got a hold of this, and the real reality started changing in these myths. But these myths originally are 100% historical truth as it happened thousands of years ago, such as the ancient 6,000 plus year old astronaut man, spaceman, with the helmet and the costume and everything, comparing this to a modern day spaceman, astronaut, NASA or whatever. If you just compare this, it looks very identical, and this is very, very ironic for something 6,000 plus years old. And the movie Prometheus, which acts as a prequel to the famous Alien films, that too represents the original case of the historical aliens, which existed first and came down and created us humans. Because as the humans in Prometheus, the movie, are going around looking for the original origins of humanity, and as they come to, forbidden alien planets, obviously this sums up what really happened back then. And even the Bible displays so much truth to extraterrestrial spacecrafts, where God, Yahweh, originally is an alien who was in a spaceship, and he was guiding the Israelites and Moses in a spaceship high up, hidden onto clouds. This is what the Bible records: God in a cloud and slowly moving over, which is ironic for God to be all-knowing. He's actually in the Bible, he's very much represented in someone who is a leader and tells other angels to go out and find out, tell me what's going around the world, etc. So yeah, this God isn't a God who's omnipresent. He's someone, as recorded in the Bible, to be an actual physical person, as he follows Moses, and he stays behind the Israelites, where he moves forward and he meets Moses face to face, or Moses goes up, beams up to him in the clouds. Or what does that mean, beams up to him in the clouds? Obviously a spaceship or something, if you're thinking of it like that. So yes, there are a lot of proof to these extraterrestrials throughout ancient history. And I know a lot of the atheists and unbelievers want to argue that all these prophets who wrote the Bible, who wrote all the ancient religious texts, were just high on acid and drugs and just made up fake and false fantasy random stuff. Well, if that was the case, we should have seen so many different no similarities at all. We shouldn't have seen this pattern of the trees, of the serpent, of the snake, of the knowledge of fire, all this continuing to repeat itself. Obviously this proves that something is going on which needs to be researched properly. Now, I have not spoken about this yet, but I'll definitely want to get into the detail about the similarities between an ancient Egyptian being found in the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead called Sebal, and his similarities compared with Satan from Christianity. Now, I'll read you a chapter found in ancient Egypt's Book of the Dead, which speaks about Sebal's punishment. Thine enemy the serpent fiend Sebal hath fallen down headlong. His arms have been bound in chains, and his legs hath Ra hacked off from him. The children of impotent revolt shall never more rise up. So as we can see here, that serpent Sebal, in conclusion, is chained up. In chains, ready for the judgment day. And what was the judgment day like for ancient Egypt? Well, it was filled with the lake of fire, all their hearts being weighed, and standing in front of the gods, and finding out if their books will be written in the book of life. Which, if it is, then they are proved the most righteous and will be able to continue on into the next life. Whilst the sinners and the ones who have cursed the gods, or the ones who have been led astray too much, will be damned for torment, and will probably be cease to exist and will not have eternal life. As I said, this information I got from a reading of the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now, moving over to what the Bible says about Satan's punishment, as we read here in Revelation 22. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. In some translations too, it says bound him in chains 1,000 years. But what we will notice that they both have in common is that they are both a serpent Sebal and serpent Satan. And too, you notice with Satan or Sebal, a very similar name indeed. Also, in the Egyptian Book of the Dead is reported a snake called Sata, S-A-T-A, very similar to Satan again. Satan, Sata, Sebal. You can see how where the word Satan originally came from if you use this type of coding. And also not to forget Horus's enemy, one of the Egyptian gods who battled Horus, with the battle amongst the gods which happened, which I'll get into a bit soon. Now remember, I did describe a bit earlier that the ancient Egyptians believed in a book of life, and anyone who was not found in the book of life while they were standing in front of the gods after death, kind of like a limbo thing, I'd say, in Christianity terms, while they're being judged, and if the names were not found in the book of life, they would be cast into the lake of fire or cease to exist. And we find here in Revelation 20:15 from the Bible, and anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. And also we'll find in Revelation that both later on the lake of fire and hell, Sheol, etc., the dead place, all of that will be thrown together and will be abominated, and all evil will cease to exist. This is what the Bible says, and this is too what the ancient Egyptians believed on the afterlife, that eventually the ones not found in the book of life and the ones who have cursed and sinned against the gods will therefore cease to exist and will not be rewarded with eternal life. And we also find this in the Quran, which speaks about the book of life too, along with what Christianity and ancient Egypt says. Now I will talk about the battle of the gods, which again is explained in nearly basically every single religion throughout the ancient world. Now, what we find first, of course, is in the ancient Sumerian texts report Enki fighting with Enlil and the other godly forces. In ancient Egypt, the Book of the Dead reports Sabal and his fiends, i.e. his friends, the ones who have joined him, are fighting against the other gods. Myths about the Tasmanian Aborigines involved a group of two gods who were battling each other, Moroni and Dromedina, and eventually Moroni was defeated and fell from the stars onto planet Earth. Now we can compare this to what Jesus says about Satan in Luke 10:18. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Now moving on, the Bible's Revelation reports Satan's angels fighting against God's angels in a big battle taking place in heaven, where this is eventually where Satan falls. And the Quran reports Iblis, i.e. Satan are the terms, who him and his jinn, which i.e. means his friends, his followers in other words, fight against God's angels, or shall I say disagree with God's angels, and therefore Satan leads along an army of his followers onto a different lifestyle, and does not follow the commands of Allah, and is very similar, as reported with Enki and his plan, with the Serpent of the Snake League, which is very different from Enlil and the other gods' plans. As it is reported here, in Surah 15:39 of the Quran, Iblis said, O my Lord, because you have put me in the wrong, I will make wrong fair seeming to them on the earth, and I will put them all in the wrong, i.e. all the humans into the wrong, which symbolizes, in other terms, the different plans what Allah wants for humanity, and i.e. the different plans that Enki wants for humanity, and i.e. the different plans that Zeus wants from humanity, as Prometheus takes the fire, the knowledge of fire, and uses it in a way which the gods do not approve of, as he gives humans the secret knowledge. And as you can see, this is full circled in nearly every religion over and over again. So the question is, for whole humanity, what are we to do with all these similarities of religion and historic events? Are we all to just say that they are all make-believe tales? Well, no. A very unbiased person with an open mind who looks at these can obviously see that something is up, and that civilizations all over the globe have been following or the truth, have been received visions from other members of a society. The truth that someone has come to them, i.e. prophets, and have showed them future events or past events, or written to them the truth of what happened in the past, or they officially saw a prophet or a god, etc. come down, like from the clouds, as every single religion says, or someone falling from the clouds, and the secret knowledge over and over again. Yes, there definitely is a pattern, and there definitely is truth to all this, as you see in religious works. The Watchers are another major similarity which keeps popping up throughout ancient religions. We find this in ancient Sumer, which is Iraq now, in the Book of Enoch, which is an ancient Jewish book which was composed before the Torah. And then we come to ancient Egypt, which talks about the Watchers and the Guardians being appointed by the head god to guard around the land, which is too, this is mentioned in the Book of Enoch, and also it is mentioned in the Bible, in the Old Testament's Job chapter, which mentions about God sending his guardian angels around the earth, and they are meant to go out and give him feedback on how the humans are behaving amongst the earth, which is very ironic for an omnipresent God to need guardians to go out and search around the earth without him already knowing what the humans are behaving like. And the answer is that the God is not omnipresent. He is an actual being, physically in form, first described in the ancient Sumerian texts while making the first humans with their DNA and ape DNA, mixing them in test tubes. And then from there on, different humans split up into different sects, and different guardians were still watching over them through their spaceships from above. But not only their spaceships, as possessions, etc., can happen, the aliens can get into our minds and control us. That is exactly how the Ouija boards work. Like, for instance, there's been lots of cases where people have used those boards and then suddenly a demonic entity has entered in their house or around the board, and this is due to them calling from above, from the using the dimensions, etc., the space dimensions. They're calling all these different energy waves, and that sends down, by playing this board, that sends down the energy waves and affects the gods, i.e. aliens, etc., the evil ones, to come down and interfere with them who are playing the board. I know a lot of atheists want to say, oh, these people are just crazy, or they are mentally sick. And if we are really to just judge all these people as being sick and not actually getting to the physical evidence or working out how this happens, how demonic possessions exactly work, how are we going to know the truth in calling everyone crazy if 1 million people spot a spaceship in the sky and the governments just call every single one of them crazy, and that's we just completely forget about it? How are we going to officially get to the truth? We're not. Because I know there are so many individuals who do not want this reality to be true. They try everything they can to try and make sure this reality doesn't exist, like all the Christ myths. They try so hard to make sure that Jesus Christ never existed at all. Even if he really did exist, they try so hard with all the evidence to show that no man called Jesus existed. The same thing with all the atheists, not all the atheists, but majority of them, who try to make sure that no such supernatural force exists. And I tried that too. I tried to block off any thoughts which led to the reality of the supernatural world, although I knew that I could not continue to ignore these. Otherwise, I'm just making up my own fantasy world where I want everything to be, as a lot of the atheists try. And there is a book called The Day Satan Called by author Bill Scott, who mentions, he promises that this is a true encounter with demonic possession and exorcism. And even on YouTube, he made a video of him where he explains that this really did happen to him in the 1980s. And ironically, if anyone remembers that they were around at the time, the 1980s in America was fixed on the Satanic Panic, where there was a belief in all these satanic rituals going along, and a lot of these demonic entities around affecting the world. There was a lot of a wide range panic at the time. So what demonic force was affecting Bill Scott and the people around him? Well, I definitely do believe it was one of the alien forces, the aliens from above, some of them who will be able to mimic humans and are able to possess others, as what happened if you read his book. And David Icke does a wonderful job in his The Biggest Secret, book 2, when describes about all these satanic groups going around, especially hidden in the mainstream world. And the most infamous one is the Bohemian Grove, where a lot of the George Bushes, they were involved in the Bohemian Grove. And in that place is a statue of a god called Moloch. And this is where they used to sacrifice children to the god, as found in the ancient Old Testament, which Yahweh describes of having hatred for no one to sacrifice their children to the god Moloch. But yes, this was an original pagan god, and it's ironic that here the American government do bow down and worship this secretly in the Bohemian Grove. Although I do not place a lot of hatred on all these gods, all these demons, aliens, because not all of them are evil. For instance, Enkai, he gave us the secret knowledge to help us with our life. The occult is not all evil. If you notice Buddhism, the 7 chakras, this is the original knowledge which was given to humanity. So Enkai, some believe that he was trying to free us from the other gods. So he wasn't necessarily evil as some other gods have been. For instance, if you look at Yahweh in the Old Testament, his hatred for everyone except for the Jews, and his world order, like a Hitler type person Yahweh is in the Old Testament. You can like Jesus says, look at people's fruits and judge them, and you'll know them by their fruits. And definitely someone like Yahweh in the Old Testament, how can you bow down to a God who commands so much destruction, compared to someone like Jesus Christ, who told us the whole entire peaceful, turn the other cheek way. But Jesus too, I definitely do believe Jesus existed. Jesus too taught against the pagan magic, black magic. The reason why Jesus hated the pagans, he didn't hate them all, but he hated their rituals, their black magic, because they were using that to curse others, as the Inquisition, etc., was killing all the witches. But Jesus told us to not use curses, to not hate each other. So this is where Satanists and Christians especially differ from one another, because Christians have the whole lifestyle of loving everyone, love your enemy. But the Satanists, say strike your enemy, like Anton LaVey says in the Satanic Bible. This is definitely something which I do not agree with in Satanism at all, although I do agree in Satanism using the magic of the 7 chakras of the meditation, which helps you become very calm and very sensitive and observing and becoming stronger in yourself and observing the universe, etc., becoming like a god-like head, but also not having the whole blame on all your enemies, but since being like a god-like head, knowing everyone emotionally and how they feel. And this is definitely something which Jesus said. He sat with the sinners, etc. There's no one like Jesus. He is very, very different than any other person on this world who came down spiritually from above. And this is the message he gave us. So yes, I definitely do bless Jesus Christ with all my heart. But otherwise, moving on, for instance, in the Sumerian text, it says that when Enki created the Brotherhood of the Snake, he didn't want it to be necessarily evil. It was just a secret occult which would help people with their daily lives and give them magic. But after a while, as it was said in the History Channel, when they were looking over the research with the Sumerians and the aliens, it said that after a while, various groups stole Enki's occult and made it evil. And they, because if you look at the occult today and the dark arts and the Satanists, they use it for power, like the whole Illuminati thing and the Satanists, they use it for power because they want to take over the world. This is like the evil negative energy that they're getting from the occult. But the occult isn't all necessarily evil. Like if you go on the website Joy of Satan, it has really helped me a lot with the meditation rituals, etc. So it is a kind of selfish thing, but a good selfish thing for your body. But I'm definitely saying, now that the Satanists too especially have to realize not to use the black magic, not to curse others, because that is not doing us any good. Because not all the pagans were evil, as for instance either the Christians or the Jews or the Muslims want to try and argue that all paganism is evil, but that is not necessarily true. Because if you look at the ancient Book of the Dead, all the gods there taught about the peace and the love and the respect and do not steal, do not commit adultery. They had all those wonderful teachings too. And so we are not to judge goddesses like Isis and gods like Horus and his father Osiris. They are not evil, even though some Satanists have taken their names and used it for evil. Like conspiracy theorists say on the Illuminati, supposedly using Horus as Lucifer, etc., or Horus's eye as Lucifer, etc. But Horus doesn't stand for any evil. He stands between good to fighting against the evil Set, as we find in the ancient Book of the Dead. Although these Satanists, a lot of them like Aleister Crowley, mixed Christian, Jewish beliefs as well together with ancient Egyptian and distorted them together into one to create all that energy, because the original gods like of ancient Egypt had snakes and serpents around them for good, to protect themselves. Like the Buddha, he had the serpent to protect, which protected him and his 7 chakras, which were a blessing. But other Satanists in nowadays have taken all this good occult stuff and mixed it together to make it all completely black, dark magic, satanic magic, to possess people and use it for evil, negative energies, when it's not all meant to be for evil. Now, I would definitely like to get back to talking about the watches found in various religions, as I started talking about before. And just on the funny note, if you look at some of the Sumerian gods, if you look at their wrists, it looks like they have wristwatches. And you might want to say something like, well, it's like a 1980s watch, so it's a bit outdated for them since they're only 12,000 years ago in the past. But I'm still pretty sure they got around pretty well. Now, before I start, I shall want to read to you in depth a little sequence of the summer creation story. Even though I already talked to you about it before, I shall now address it in more detail so we get a better picture. Now, it goes like this. They summoned and asked the goddess, the midwife of the gods, the wise birth giver, saying to a creature, give life, create workers, create a primitive worker that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke assigned by Enlil, let the worker carry the toil of the gods. Now, this, of course, summarizes that the gods wanted to create a race which would be a work race. And this is very similar as we find in the Bible with God making his Israelites having to sacrifice animals and having to do the rituals that God wants us to do, because we are his servants and slaves, like in the Quran. We are Allah's slaves. This is where it originated from in ancient Sumer. Now, moving on to ancient Egypt. It has here stated in the Book of the Dead, in a prayer, Deliver thou Osiris and I, victorious from the watchers who give judgment, who have been appointed by the god Neb-er-tcher, to protect him and to fasten the fetters on his foes. Now, as you see, it has the word the Watchers. Ancient Egypt's Book of the Dead has a lot to do with watchers, a group of watchers which guard over various specific activities over the humans. Here are some more references to the Watchers found in the Book of the Dead. As concerning the Watchers who give judgment, they are the apes Isis and Nephis. May the 9 Watchers grant that Osiris may wake up and that he may never be destroyed. David Icke too makes a good reference to the Egyptian Watchers and the various Watchers found throughout the Book of Enoch, the Jewish scriptures, and the Christian scriptures, and Islam too, which talks about Watchers and Guardians, which I shall be going into now. Now here's the first Enoch reference. And I, Enoch, was blessing the great Lord and the King of eternity, and behold, the Watchers called to me. And I spoke in front of them all, the visions that I had seen in my sleep, and I began to speak these words to reprove the Watchers of heaven. So as you can see here, the Watchers of heaven guarding up above. This is too mentioned in the Quran, which I will go into a bit later. Now the next section, which happens after the creation of the humans, is the idea of the sons of God finding the daughters attractive of mankind and producing offspring. As we find in the Bible, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Now this story too again is in ancient Sumer, with the gods etc. mating with various humans and producing offspring, mainly giants or in different types of sizes, as we find here in the Book of Enoch. And they became pregnant and bore large giants, and their height was 3,000 cubits. And the woman bore giants, and thereby the whole earth has been filled with blood and iniquity. And taken wives for yourselves, and done as the sons of the earth, and begotten giant sons. Now this story too is found with Zeus in ancient Greece when he mated with an average human female, and there they produced Heracles, or Hercules is known in the ancient Greek world. And it says here in Genesis 6:4, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. As I mentioned before about the giants which were produced, etc., with this breeding process. And we can see here it says about mighty men, which the daughters of the human race and the gods, the aliens, produced together. They created the figures which we now know of as Hercules and the other very powerful figures which were really historical beings. So if we look around the world in all the religions, there is a offspring or someone who was born or a man or woman who possessed so much power, like a god or a goddess with a godhead state. So yes, we can 100% agree that these people did really exist, thanks to the aliens as they bred with mankind. Now Jesus describes too in one of the Gnostic Gospels, which are the Gospels which didn't make it into the final New Testament. It is the secret book of John. And here Jesus describes the very similar story, myth, if you want to call it that, about the daughters of mankind mating with the godlike beings. The angels took women, and from the darkness they produced children similar to their spirit. They closed their minds and became stubborn through the stubbornness of the contemptible spirit, until the present day. Now remember what I read to you from one of the chapters from the Book of Enoch. It describes about, as it says here, and when the woman bore giants, and thereby the whole earth has been filled with blood and iniquity. As you see here, God is getting angry when the angels or the other gods, etc., depending on what myth you read it from, the god gets angry and doesn't approve of these other beings. Because if you think about it, the reason why he doesn't approve of them is because, remember, the humans are meant to be his slaves, and now his own kind, his own chief commander kind with the same alien DNA have bred with the daughters of mankind, producing supernatural offspring, which obviously this would be abominable against God, because now these offspring has the key to get into the occult and overthrow the throne, which is basically what the Bible says is Satan's plan, to overthrow God and become as powerful. And this is what they can. They can become as powerful through the occult knowledge, which through the breeding process they have become. Like Hercules, he becomes very strong and supernatural thanks to Zeus. So this is the message which Jesus Christ mentions in the secret book of John, even though we do not have the 100% proof that Jesus Christ said these words or even mentioned about them. But still, what does matter is that these myths are based on true other myths which were told thousands of years ago. So why would somebody keep writing a book with the exact same myths which were composed way in the other side of the world. And so Jesus Christ's message here in the secret book of John is to not get lost in the occult or become completely godlike and completely forget the peacefulness and the righteousness of humanity. Because obviously if you become godlike, you can be like Zeus with the thunder, and you can strike down anyone you can, like the Satanists who decide to curse a lot of people with their hexes, etc., which Jesus definitely did not appreciate of. Now we're going to talk about Islam, and I'll give you some proof here that Islam's Prophet Muhammad was being guided by the true spirit which was guiding all the other religions before that, especially the spirit who wrote the book of Enoch and the spirit who wrote many of the Bible chapters and the Sumerian ancient texts. Because what we find here is Muhammad, which I'll read to you, he's talking about the giants which were first born, and then he also makes mention of the jinn, and they are described very, very realistically and very similar, as we find with the Sabalfins in the ancient Book of the Dead, and various of the gods / aliens, extraterrestrials if you like, from the Sumerian ancient texts. So yes, Muhammad definitely was being guided by a true light source from above, as he received these revelations. So yes, Muhammad did give some historic, futuristic revelations, which a lot of do agree on in the Muslim scholar field. But right now, this here, Muhammad gave the truth of what happened thousands of years ago, 6,000, 12,000 plus years ago. It says here, Abu Hurairah reported Allah's messenger as saying, Allah, the exalted and glorious, created Adam in his own image with his length of 60 cubits, even though the book of Enoch doesn't exactly agree with it being 60 cubits, but another length. It doesn't really matter. He's a human, Muhammad, etc. He makes mistakes. I agree on that. We all make mistakes. What matters is that he's talking about the giant Adam, which was the first human created. Anyway, moving on. And as he created him, he told him to greet that group, and that was a party of angels sitting there. And listen to the response that they gave him, for it would form his greeting and that of his offspring. He then went away and said, Peace be upon you. They, the angels, said, May there be peace be upon you and the mercy of Allah, and they made an addition of mercy of Allah. So he who get into paradise would get in the form of Adam, his length being 60 cubits. Then the people who followed him continue to diminish in size up to this day. So as you can see, we first were supposedly giants, the first early humans, and then we slowly decreased in size. And as we see throughout the ancient world, there are a lot of giants mentioned in the ancient religions. So for Christians to say that Muhammad absolutely had no revelations from the true God's Holy Spirit from above, like David Wood, the Christian David Wood says, as he tries so hard to discredit Muhammad from any of his prophecies or any of the miraculous content of the Quran, you still have to definitely be open-minded about this and see that a man living in a native desert and somehow gets recorded all these facts which all the other myths, ancient Greek, etc. I mean, come on, Muhammad was against paganism. And look what he's doing here. He's giving the essence of the form of the offspring of the giants which were found in paganism. But what does that mean? It means that this originally happened. What is reported in the paganism world, this really did happen. And so Muhammad is getting the exact same revelation, being, again, because as it says in the Quran, every single nation was received a messenger from God, and this makes it especially clear. I mean, ancient Egypt's love, peace, respect, commandments, and then Jesus too came and preached the same thing. We can see how God, the aliens, extraterrestrials, the good ones, work in the way of monitoring the human race and us staying away from evil. So this definitely is a good sign from the God, from the alien, from the extraterrestrial, from the light source in the other dimension guiding humanity. And again, just like the book of Enoch about the watchers and ancient Egypt about the watchers, etc., it talks about the watchers and the guardians in the Quran. They are above you guardians, and he is the subjugator above his servants, and he sends over you guardian angels. For each one are successive angels before you and behind him, who protect him by the decree of Allah. And again, the Quran gives the same revelation, which what happened in the past, about various humans mating with sons of God or other extraterrestrials, which God did not agree of, as it says here in Surah 72:6. And there were men from mankind who sought refugee in men from the jinn, extraterrestrial race, so they only increased them in burden. Now again, for the Christians and the other faiths to say that Muhammad was not being guided by God's revelation, why is it that he gets everything correct which the other religions are or aware of? And it says here, and we have sought to reach the heaven, space's atmosphere, but found it filled with powerful guards, i.e. watchers, and burning flames. So as you see here, the humans wanted to try and reach Earth's atmosphere, because when it talks about heaven in the old religions, it's mostly more referring to the sky, the atmosphere above. And you can see Allah doesn't agree with humans reaching that destiny, the same way that the other gods, etc. Zeus doesn't agree with Prometheus giving humans the ancient knowledge of fire, and Enlil doesn't agree when Enki gives humans the secret knowledge of the occult, because they are the slaves. They are not meant to, humans are not meant to receive true Godhead, because if they do receive true Godhead, it can stir up a lot of problems when you have so many people who know the secret forces of the world and are trying to dominate selfishly. Because Allah and Zeus and Yahweh or Jesus and Enlil know that humans, when they all receive the power, they can become very selfish indeed and want to overtake the throne, just like Satan is recorded in the Bible. And this is the teachings and the messages which keeps coming up throughout the religions. Just like Yahweh in the Old Testament, when he talks about Babel, which is actually from ancient myths recording about humans trying to reach up to heaven. So again, in various religions, this keeps repeating itself. Anyway, we read here in Genesis 11:6-9. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. So as you can see here, God is being afraid of humanity's intelligence, because they are going to try, if they keep reaching the heavens, they're going to try and overtake the throne and become more selfish and powerful indeed. And as he says here, go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So as you can see here, he says, let us go down, because he's talking to the other gods, i.e. the other extraterrestrials, for them to all go down and help stop humans from reaching this sacred knowledge, occult. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. So as you can see here, God changed all people's languages so they couldn't cooperate with one another, because he did not want them to receive eternal enlightenment from reaching the heavens. The exact same thing in the Quran. So again, the Quran is being guided by a true light source from the gods above. And here I have written here, the Tower of Babel displays a similar meaning compared with ancient Greek god Zeus, not agreeing with Prometheus, who gave humans secret knowledge of fire, ancient Sumerian god Enki, who gave humans occult knowledge, Allah not agreeing with humans trying to reach heaven, i.e. Earth's atmosphere, and therefore places guards on the scene, watchers, as samely described in ancient Egypt and the book of Enoch. So as we get here, Enlil, Zeus, Yahweh, Jesus, and Allah all prohibit secret magic. Especially Jesus when he talks about us loving one another, because obviously if all of us have these true occult knowledge, we will become selfish indeed, as Satanists have become around the world today. So yes, Satan does exist as a real being, but not under the term Satan, as Satan only means enemy. And in the book of Enoch it talks about many Satans. Same way in ancient Egypt it talks about the Sebal fiends and the jinns in the Quran, etc. So I do not blame Enki for giving humans a secret knowledge, because he wanted to enlighten us, and being enlightened is very good, as the Buddhists realize. But unfortunately, when so many people receive the knowledge of the occult, we turn evil and bad, as we see with the satanic Illuminati New World Order, which uses the occult against us, wanting to take over the world, as what people like Jesus warned us about and Muhammad warned us about, etc. Because as we see in the Bible and the Quran, etc., it keeps talking about this force which has the secret knowledge, which is trying to overthrow God on the throne, and it causes the world to suffer a lot. And as we see here, this is what the occult is doing, but it's not Enki's fault, because he didn't want any of this to happen officially before. He just gave humans the knowledge to help us, since we were supposedly slaves under God, the same way Prometheus did. but then he was punished. But then, ironically, Hercules came to the rescue and saved Prometheus, as it's recorded in ancient Greece. So Hercules had feelings for Prometheus, and he helped him, save him from the torment. The same way Jesus Christ says we must love our enemies, turn the other cheek, and truly bless those who curse us. This is definitely the message, the true message, which is going to help world peace and all the evil, because the Satanists keep ignoring this and they keep using it to completely try and destroy us with their evil plans. But we must remember, do not repay evil with evil, and this is one of the most special commandments that is written in the Bible, the New Testament, which we should all definitely follow. Now, just to sum up, to make sure that everyone is on the right page, and to show you that all the religions are talking about the exact same thing, which makes this 100% historically accurate, and this really did happen thousands of years ago. We read in the book of Enoch, 40 verse 7, "And the fourth voice I heard driving away the Satans, and not allowing them to come in front of the Lord of Spirits to accuse those who dwell on the high ground." The Satans, again, stands for a label of the evildoers, the wrongdoers. We read in the book of the dead, "The Sebal fiend hath fallen to the ground." On the day of the destruction of the Sebal fiends. So Satans and the Sebal fiends are the same thing. It is talking about the accusers, the wrongdoers of the gods or God. And here is another verse from the book of Enoch, 65 verse 6. "For they have learnt all the secrets of the angels, and all the wrongdoings of the Satans, and all their secret power, and all the power of those who practice magic arts." Right here, the book of Enoch completely marks everyone on the spot, saying that it doesn't agree with the magic arts and the occult, which originally Enkai gave, and now the Satans are using that, the wrongdoers of the gods. Right here, it marks everyone on the spot what happened, the truth which the religions are talking about. And I say here, Zeus in ancient Greece did not agree with Prometheus teaching humans secret magic arts. Neither did Enlil when Enkai gave humans occult knowledge. Neither did Yahweh when the serpent gave Adam and Eve secret knowledge. And neither did Muhammad agree with humans learning the secret knowledge of magic arts, i.e. black magic. All the religions, one by one, talking, agreeing with the same thing, the same beings, the same evildoers, wrongdoers, supposedly, of the gods, which really did exist 100% when we can look at the evidence and mark it right on the spot and off the checklist right here. Now, once we align various fallen angels or gods throughout the ancient religious scriptures, first starting with the ancient Tasmanian Aboriginal myth story, as I detailed earlier, as it mentions the god Moroni, who had a battle in heaven, i.e. the sky/space, amongst the god Dromadina, and for this, Moroni fell to the ground from the sky onto the earth. Now coming to the Bible's Luke 10:18, Jesus says, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." And coming to the book of Enoch 86:1, it says here, "I looked with my eyes as I was sleeping, and I saw heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven." And we come to the book of the dead, ancient Egypt's book of the dead. It says, "The serpent fiend Sabal hath fallen down headlong." So we can compare all these four characters throughout the ancient religious world and see how similar they are amongst each other, all of them falling from heaven or the sky or from the stars, etc. All these characters reporting, whoever tells the story here, that a being fell from heaven. And all the religions, most of them, the majority of all the religions, are agreeing with one another of this event which happened thousands of years ago, and yet this belief took place around all the different regions across the world, and ironically they got all of them right. Very similar, detailed, the same proportion of a myth story. If this was all fake, we shouldn't have seen this. We shouldn't have seen the majority of the similarities throughout the religious world, which definitely proves that something is up, and this probably, perhaps, definitely really did happen years ago, which the atheists need to wake up and acknowledge this, as I have pointed out here and written here. Enkai, Moroni, the Sebal fiends, the Satans, Prometheus, the Jinn are all of the same party group that the religions all describe about and have warned about, which concludes that religious revelation and historical scriptures all agree with one another on what truly happened thousands of years ago amongst the gods, i.e. aliens extraterrestrials, once they first came to Earth and aligned their troops to create the human race. As we see first in the Sumerian text, when they come to decide to create a human race, and then in the Bible too, we are slaves to God. In the Quran, we are slaves to Allah, and then we have the other Sabaothines, the Jinn, Moroni, Prometheus, Enkai. It keeps going on and on with all these other characters who have come and tried to infiltrate that plan of slavery and to bring the occult knowledge up so the humans can become more powerful than the original gods, i.e. the original aliens who created us as the slave race, as well. All the religions seem to agree with another as, which definitely proves and concludes that there is very much of so many similarities in the religious world, and that aliens really do exist. Gods equals really aliens, as David Icke points out very well in his book, The Biggest Secret. And me, with concluding with this research and this long video presentation and lecture, which hopefully has gotten through to the audience who is listening to me right now. And I say thank you so much for listening to me, and bless you all very much. And hopefully I gave you some truth, even though if you don't believe me, you don't have to 100%. You can do your own research if you want, but hopefully I at least addressed a lot of good points which will stick with you and stick with you with the years to come, whilst you listen to other religious beliefs, and then hopefully can remember what I've said here about the similarities, and even do your own research too if you want to about this and see what conclusion you come to. So thank you very much. Blessings to you all.